Welcome back, my friends, to the show that never ends. I'm Brandon Ware. You're watching Angel 65, and this is Chapter 3 of Pink Floyd Deep Dive, the early years box set. I'm going to unbox this now, but I am going to include a timestamp for when this ends, in case you already have it or have seen another one, because this is going to be a lengthy one. Starting with the outer box, which you may or may not be able to tell on camera, has some scuffs and shelfware on it, because as I'm sure you can see by looking at it, this thing is a major pain in the ass to store. That is probably my biggest gripe with it, because on the one hand this is extremely cool, and on the other it is superfluous and even a bit ridiculous. But here is the outer box with just a white stripe on it. Trying to get the camera to focus here. We have Pink Floyd in either direction on the top, and then on the sides we have the early years, 1965 to 1972. Pull off the top. On the inside of this box there is some of that marbling design, which we're going to see on the individual CD and Blu-ray volumes. I must admit, the first time I opened this, I was very disappointed. I knew they were going to be book-style volumes, but I expected them to take up the whole box. So when I opened this giant box, to find a little box inside of it, I was a little bit disappointed. So here is the inner box that has the volumes in it, again with the white stripe. I do like the style of each of the individual volumes, but my biggest gripe is that none of them have that many pictures. They could have done a bigger booklet for each of these and then just included the credits all in one big book. Here's volume 1, Cambridge Station. There are the CDs. At the back we have just the Blu-ray because I sold off the DVDs. I didn't feel like keeping them both. Each of them has a little booklet like this with captions for all the photos that are included, as well as track listing. Then a pocket at the back with the memorabilia and a smaller booklet that has the credits and an essay for each of the individual volumes, plus a short essay at the back by Lana Topham, who is the archivist for the film part of the project. So in this one we've got Arnold Layne sheet music with a still from the video on the front. Commonwealth Institute. This one is Queen's Hall in Leeds. This is an ad for the singles or the first album or something, I forget. We have Queen Elizabeth Hall, a flyer and a ticket stub. The Candyman, Smokestack Lightning, and a ticket from the UFO Club. Okay, that is the first volume covering the Syd Barrett era. Next we have 1968, Germination, CD, Blu-ray. Some photos. I do love the paper stock of this. I think it's got this really cool matte finish with some glossy text on it. It does look very nice. I just wish that the booklets were thicker and had more in them. In this volume we've got some poster for Blue Cheer and Pink Floyd and whatever. This one is the Avalon Ballroom. This one is The Bank. And Theatre 140, 26, 27, and 28 Septembre. And then the little booklet again with the publishing stuff. Next one, 1969, Dramatization, 2 CDs and a Blu-ray. For memorabilia, we've got a correspondence from the fan club or something. Pink Floyd newsletter, it says. Pink Floyd and their azimuth coordinator at the Dome in Brighton. The Concertgebouw, Amsterdam. I'm not even going to attempt to pronounce that name. I don't know where that one is at. Electric Garden goes underground. You can probably tell by the tone of my voice that I have mixed opinions on this. It's not that it isn't cool, I don't see the point. I don't know if it's really adding value to the overall set. They're neat little memorabilia items, but I think just a big scrapbook full of this stuff would have sufficed. So this has 2 CDs. This is 1970, Deviation, and the back folds out because this would have had 2 DVDs in it, plus the Blu-ray, but again, sold off those DVDs. Don't regret it. Absolutely no point in keeping them. Made a little bit of my money back on this when I sold those. Just a little bit. To me, this is probably the most interesting volume in terms of the audio and video it contains. The Royal Albert Hall, An Evening with Pink Floyd. Pink Floyd, Adam Hart Mother, a radio or an ad for Melody Maker or something. The Osceola. Casino Montreux. This one's funny because it says Sid, Roger, Rick, and Nick. Sid is misspelled, and of course by this point Sid is long gone. Guess the promoters didn't catch up yet. And the booklet, and this one is filled to the brim and actually is printing on the front page because there's so much publishing information and what have you. 1971, Reverberation. CD and Blu-ray. The BBC session on this is fantastic. What have we got here? University of Essex. Santa Monica Civic. Another newsletter from Harvest Records. And an ad for metal. And the publishing book. Next up, 1972, Obfuscation. CD. And in the back we have the replacement CD for Obscured by Clouds, because for those who don't know, when this box set was first released, it was planned to be 27 discs, but Live at Pompeii on CD was included on accident, and so that is this CD. It was put in here instead of Obscured by Clouds, and the CD that should have been in here, which is Obscured by Clouds, was included in an extra CD wallet outside the main box set. But since I have eliminated the DVD, I've just placed that in here. When this was re-released as an individual volume, they included both CDs as part of the planned packaging. Pink Floyd, Chuck Berry, and Slade at the Lancaster Polytechnic. Japan, Osaka, I think. This might even be one of the performances that's in there. I don't remember. Lobby card or something for La Vallée. Empire Pool, Wembley. French tour or something. And Zurich. And publishing book. And last, we have the bonus volume exclusive to the box set. Continuation CD at the front, and again this folds out because this would have had 2 DVDs and 2 Blu-rays, but all you're going to get here are the Blu-rays. I did rip those DVDs before I sold them, so I do have the backup disc images if for some reason I need to burn a copy of the DVD, but the Blu-rays look and sound much better, so I highly doubt that would be necessary. Publishing book. This one does not have memorabilia with it, because of course this instead includes the full box of memorabilia. So at the bottom of the box we've got this foam pull-out. Pull this out and we have Yet another box within a box. Seems to be a feature of these most recent Pink Floyd reissues. This one I do like. Got this like wrapping paper with the psychedelic marbling on it, and we've got 10 additional things in here. So we've got the T-Sets Bedford van on a postcard. This one is All Saints Hall poster. These are a little bit damaged because I did attempt to hang them with tape at one point, which was just stupid because it messed them up a little bit, and they are just, none of these are particularly interesting. This one's actually pretty interesting, the Saville Theater. You see some of the other people like Fairport Convention, Jimi Hendrix Experience, and Crazy World of Arthur Brown. A Sacramento concert flyer. Why? Don't know. This one is worth having, the Oxymenes poster with the Azimuth coordinator, the Man in the Journey tour. And we have the Man in the Journey program. I do like stuff like this, booklets with pictures and stuff, but just little concert ticket replicas and flyers and stuff I'm not too keen on. But this is cool. I do like this. Oh, I hope I don't get claimed for that quick little snippet of John Lennon's ass right there. No More Singles, a press clipping. Australian Tour 71. This one looks cool, but again, why? And then again, interesting, this is the program for Eclipse, which is of course the working title for Dark Side of the Moon as it was performed on the road, and it has all the lyrics, some of which are slightly different to the album version, as does this. This is program from the Rainbow Theater, where they performed Dark Side of the Moon under that title, still before the album was released. So there's all our memorabilia, what have you. And underneath that, we've got our 5 vinyl singles, which certainly are one of the buying points of the box set. I'm not going to bother taking them out. They all just have a Columbia label. So we've got Arnold Layne and Candy in a Currant Bun. See Emily Play with The Scarecrow. Apples and Oranges with Paint Box. It Would Be So Nice with Julia Dream. And Careful With That, Axe Eugene, and Point Me at the Sky, which has another little flyer in it for some reason. Alright, that is the box set, and I'm going to spend the next 10 minutes putting it away. Alright, welcome to Angel 65. If you have skipped the unboxing, then welcome back. My name is Brandon Ware, and today we're talking about Pink Floyd, the early years. Where to begin with this one? Before we go through some of this content on each of the individual volumes, let's talk about the product itself. When I first bought this, this was my senior year of high school, and at that time it was the most expensive purchase I had ever made on anything. At this point I did not own a car, I did not know how to drive, and I certainly wasn't a clothes fanatic, so this is the most money I had ever spent on anything. And I saved up for months to afford it and waited months for it to come out. I ordered it and got it shipped on release day. And believe me when I say I was so excited. At that time, I thought I was the biggest Pink Floyd fan in the world. And I am still a huge Pink Floyd fan, as you can tell. But this definitely challenged my assertion as to how big of a fan I was. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but it's leading me into the should you buy this product or not. If you are an absolute die-hard Pink Floyd fan and you want the journey through these early years, then it's phenomenal. It's one of the best arranged, restored, and presented archive box sets ever. That it's probably the most gorgeous and intricate box set that I've ever owned. And as a product, something that's truly for the fans, it's really cool. And it really does function as an archive, like a living archive of just everything that, almost everything that they possibly could have included, as far as I can tell. There might be some stuff that they chose not to include or stuff that they couldn't include for copyright reasons, but it's incredibly expansive. And what gives this archival box set an edge over, say, the King Crimson box sets is the video material. The audio material is fantastic and would have made a great box set on its own, but it's the video material that really makes this quite the collector's item. I do think it was a really neat idea how they split it into individual volumes for each year, and the additional volume in there is really nice as well. The vinyl singles are cool. The memorabilia, as I said in the unboxing, I do think concert programs and stuff are really neat. As far as concert posters and concert tickets and newspaper ads and things like that, I'm a lot less interested in that stuff. Not because it isn't cool or interesting to look at, it doesn't serve a function outside the box set. But again, if you look at this as kind of a living archive, like a giant scrapbook box, just a giant comprehensive archive of their early years, then in that way that stuff does serve a purpose. It makes you wonder why they chose to print what they printed versus what they didn't, what made them decide, oh, this concert ticket looks cool, or this was an important show, etc. It's all very interesting, but it seems a bit odd to me. And I would have liked maybe perhaps a giant book with more pictures and just like scans of all these little memorabilia items and stuff, and then the individual CD volumes versus each CD volume having a little booklet of pictures and then a little booklet of credits and then some small little reproductions inside of it. And that way I like what they did with the later years box set a lot more, even though that box set has a whole host of things that I'm sure I'll be able to criticize when we get there in the last chapter. But here we're starting at the very beginning. So let's begin, shall we? With 65 to 67, Cambridge Station, the Syd Barrett years. The first 6 tracks on this are from a demo recording made for, I think, Decca Records. And this is when Rado Close was still in the band. Very, very rough, raw recordings. Very interesting to hear them in their early rhythm and blues kind of outfit before they really started finding their way as a psychedelic band. Those 6 tracks were released before this box set on a vinyl 10-inch or something, which I don't remember what it was called, and I don't own it. So this was my introduction to them. Are any of them particularly like great songs? No, not at all, but they are interesting to hear, just to hear the band in its earliest incarnation and the earliest recordings they ever made. This is followed by the singles Arnold Lane, See Emily Play, Apples and Oranges, Candy in a Currant Bun, and Paint Box. And then this is followed by some remixes and archival tracks. So Matilda Mother, which we discussed in the previous video because it's included on the sampler compilation, has different vocal takes from Richard and Sid with different lyrics. Jug Band Blues is just a slightly different, more modern mix. In the Beach Woods was also included on that compilation. That's a nice little instrumental that I enjoy. And then we get Vegetable Band and Scream Thy Last Scream, neither of which is a great song, but again, for archival purposes, just to hear all of this Syd Barrett stuff is fascinating, because other than what's in this box set, there's really very little material from the Syd Barrett era other than the first album and the 3 singles. So to have all of it included here is nice. So that first disc is about 52 minutes long. The second disc has 2 things on it. We start with the concert in Stockholm, where the vocals are barely audible, but it's still a nice instrumental set. Just a shame that the vocals are basically inaudible, because, I mean, that is what makes this first period interesting, is hearing Sid, and you barely hear him at all. You only hear his guitar. The set list is Reaction in G, Matilda Mother, Power Talk Age, Scream Thy Last Scream, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, See Emily Play, and of course the grand finale instrumental, Interstellar Overdrive. The second half of this disc has John Latham studio recordings, and it's split into version 1 through 9 individual tracks, but really it's all just one long improvisational jam that, in all honesty, is not very pleasant to listen to. It's basically instrumental overdrive without the space sound effects, brought down to earth. It's very non-musical, incidental, bizarre music, so not particularly enjoyable to listen to. But again, I keep reiterating this point, like, is all of the stuff in here like the most enjoyable, greatest quality stuff to listen to? No, but as a document of the band in their early years, where we get really quite an in-depth peek behind the curtain as to what they might have been like in those years, it is fascinating stuff. On the Blu-ray and DVD, we've got the first is Chapter 24, which is just some 8mm film of the band and of Sid, and then just various TV clips and things. Nick's Boogie, Instrumental Overdrive at UFO, Arnold Lane video, Power Talk H and Astronomy Domini on the Look of the Week. That was pretty entertaining to hear this, what's his name, Hans Keller or something, basically telling Sid and Roger how much he doesn't like their stuff. Very funny. That was entertaining. I enjoyed watching that. A promo for The Scarecrow, a promo for Jug Band Blues, Apples and Oranges on Dick Clark during the first U.S. visit, and this is particularly interesting. I'm not sure how much of the footage from their U.S. visit survives, but this is the only thing included from it on this set, and it is rather sad to see in context, because at the start of this disc you can see Sid is in great spirits. It looks like he's having the time of his life, even in that Hans Keller interview from May, and then by November when they're in America. You can just see he's not there. The lights are off. Nobody's home. He's barely miming the words, and he looks like he's a million miles away. And it really does bring some visual evidence to just where he was at that point in his life, and just how his time with Pink Floyd was coming to an end in a rather sad fashion. And it's very depressing to watch, but very eye-opening. And then we get some more TV stuff documenting the stupid hippie crap, which, again, you know how I feel about that if you've seen other videos. Another improv at UFO, Samily play on Top of the Pops, partially restored, a very poorly kept magnetic tape, but nice to see that in black and white, in the best quality that I guess it can be. An alternate version of The Scarecrow, and then some more hippie stuff at Instrumental Overdrive, which I'm not sure why that last one was included, because it includes almost no footage of the band at all. It's just them playing Instrumental Overdrive. I keep calling it that, Interstellar Overdrive, and with just a bunch of hippies doing hippie crap with the music in the background. Archival stuff, it's interesting. The stuff where you don't actually see the band, and it's more just these TV clips, and that's just promoting all the hippie stuff in the London Underground. I don't know why that stuff rubs me the wrong way. I find it very lame. And that whole swinging London scene just, in my opinion, Pink Floyd were really far and away from that. I realized that they were like the house band of the London psychedelic movement, but compared to the people that they apparently were playing to based on those video clips, they seem to be a lot more sophisticated than their audience, is my honest opinion. Just a bunch of acid-taking hippies, if you ask me. Doesn't hold up. But that first volume, fascinating to see all of that footage with Sid, and again, particularly that Apples and Oranges clip. Just depressing, but eye-opening. Moving on to Germination. The CD here is cool. Again, we open with the singles, Point Me at the Sky, It Would Be So Nice, Julia Dream, Careful with That Axe Eugene. Be prepared for a lot of Careful with That Axe Eugene if you buy this box set. Followed by 2 unreleased studio tracks, Song 1 and Roger's Boogie from Capitol Studios in LA. This is followed by 2 BBC sessions, which the BBC sessions for me were a big buying point for this box set. I was extremely excited to hear those, and for the most part I was not disappointed. And it was not just the band playing that I was interested in, although of course I was, but interested in hearing John Peel, because of course John Peel is one of the greatest and most influential radio DJs of all time. And you can tell by his comments in between the songs that he really cared for the bands that he played, and he broke these bands because he thought that they deserved it, and that's really fun to hear, just him gassing these bands up and showing what sounds like some very genuine excitement for them. So the first session, which is from June '68, we get Murderotic Woman, aka Careful with That Axe Eugene, A Saucerful of Secrets, aka The Masked Gadgets of Hercules, Let There Be More Light in Julia Dream, and the second session from December has Point Me at the Sky, Embryo, and Interstellar Overdrive. The Blu-ray here is very interesting because it's mostly TV clips, and this is a period where the band is trying to break commercially and promote their singles. And so they're doing a lot of miming and stuff like that. So the first 23-minute section is from Brussels, Belgium, and how do you pronounce this? Tiener Klonken, something like that. And it's just 7 tracks of them miming in various settings. Astronomy Domini, Scarecrow, Corporal Clegg, Paintbox, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, See Emily Play, and Bike. I must say it is rather humorous to watch because they are not the best mimers in the world, and it's particularly weird to see them miming to Sid's voice on Astronomy Domini and Bike. Very strange to see them miming to Sid's voice. Incredibly bizarre. Maybe even wrong, but fascinating. Apples and Oranges from Vibrato Brussels, which Roger pretends to sing, again miming to Sid's voice very badly. This is followed by Bouton Rouge, Paris from February 68. This is them actually performing live. Astronomy Domini, Flaming, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, Let There Be More Light. And again, some of these clips are interesting. David Gilmour has taken the lead on Flaming, and he clearly doesn't remember all the words. Singing the same verse twice, and Richard and him are singing different words at the same time. It's very funny. It looks like they were kind of under-rehearsed for this, but then again, I mean, they're singing songs that Sid wrote, because they don't have that much new material at this time. Fascinating stuff. This is followed by another clip of Paintbox, another instrumental improvisation for some hippie crap. Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, a fragment from a program called All My Loving. It Would Be So Nice from Rome Goes Pop, another Interstellar Overdrive clip. This is followed by Castival from Belgium. Astronomy Domini and Roger Waters interview where he says, where this guy asks him, is your music commercial? And he says, I don't know, are our records selling here? And the guy says, I think you're not commercial, so we're not selling here. Funny stuff, very humorous, and for that reason it is worth checking out. And then we get some clips from Paris. Let There Be More Lights, Remember a Day, Let There Be More Lights, Let There Be More Lights, Flaming, and Let There Be More Lights. A lot of that track on here. And then the disc closes with Point Me at the Sky, the restored promo video, which is certainly nice to see. Very cute promo for what I think is a great song. It's a shame that it didn't chart. I mean, I guess it's not some magical work of art. It's certainly no Beatles single, that's for sure, but it's a cute, catchy pop song. You can see why they moved away from doing that, but it shows that they could write something catchy with hooks in it if they wanted to. This one's interesting for all the TV performances, just to see them in their first year with Gilmour. They don't really have all that much new material yet, and they're still just kind of finding their feet. 1969, Dramatization. Now, this is where stuff starts to get really interesting. So, we start with some more alternate takes from the More album. Hollywood theme beat version. More blues, Seabirds. We get Embryo from Picnic, the Harvest Record sampler, so the studio version of that track. And this is followed by a really good BBC session, about 3/4 of which is included on the sampler volume. Grantchester Meadows, Cymbeline, The Narrow Way, Green is the Color, Careful with That Axe Eugene, followed by Live at the Paradiso, and Amsterdam, instrumental, I literally did it again, oh my goodness, Interstellar Overdrive, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, Careful with That Axe Eugene, and A Saucer Full of Secrets. CD2. CD2 is really the buying point of this set, because this was a massive eye-opener for me, reading the liner notes and then hearing this, that a lot, maybe not a lot, but a fair amount of the material that ended up on Ummagumma and More actually started as pieces that were part of this conceptual suite called Oxymenes, I think I'm pronouncing that right, that was split into 2 parts, The Man and the Journey. We saw the program for that and a poster for it in the extra memorabilia that's exclusive to the giant box. And this is fascinating to hear this full performance from Amsterdam, and this is the concert cabal, and it's mixed incredibly well. And to hear this full performance of this, really their first full conceptual suite, is mind-blowing. This was very, very mind-blowing to hear. And after not listening to it for God knows how many years, again, I was absolutely stunned by how interesting it is. It's certainly not the most cohesive piece ever, but just them taking these risks with these big conceptual suites where they rework some old songs and then they have some new songs that got put on studio albums, where on those studio albums you really don't get a full sense of exactly what these pieces were meant to be on stage. So The Man starts with Daybreak, which is Grantchester Meadows, Work, Afternoon, which is Biding My Time, Doing It, Sleeping, Nightmare, which is Cymbeline, and Labyrinth. And then part 2, The Journey, has The Beginning, which is green as the color and fades into Careful with That Axe, Eugene, which is part of the suite, is called Beset by Creatures of the Deep, followed by The Narrow Way, The Pink Jungle, which is Powar Talk H, The Labyrinths of Oxymenes, Footsteps, Doors, which is a bunch of sound effects and stuff, Behold the Temple of Light, and The End of the Beginning, which is basically the second half of A Saucerful of Secrets, which is a very fantastic ending. To hear them put these conceptual suites together with a lot of sound effects and stuff like it, you can tell that this is like, okay, this is a band that is going places where they're going to do some cool conceptual stuff. This is really probably the first major stepping stone towards metal and Dark Side of the Moon, is The Man and the Journey. So getting to hear what they were actually up to in 1969, because the 2 albums released that year only really tell part of the story, and actually hearing them do it is phenomenal. And I can only imagine how cool the quadraphonic sound must have sounded in person at that time to people that just had never heard anything like that before. The Blu-ray, this is the most expansive one yet, with 94 minutes of stuff. We start with In Paris with Forum Musiques, which is where they kind of play on top of the studio tracks, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun and A Saucerful of Secrets, which isn't particularly interesting. They're just in a small studio with a bunch of young kids sitting cross-legged and stuff, but cool clip, I guess. This is followed by about 14 minutes of them rehearsing at the Royal Albert Hall from The Man and the Journey, which is cool to hear them conversing back and forth and just practicing some of the pieces. And you can tell that even at this point, Roger has really taken the lead when it comes to like what the concept is and just dynamics and stuff. And so, despite some of my misgivings and dark things I've said about him in the previous 2 episodes, it's true that he was a major creative force in Pink Floyd, and had he not been there in these early days, the band would have been basically directionless. I think that is a fair assessment to make. Essencer Pop and Blues Festival, Careful with That Axe, Eugene, again, A Saucerful of Secrets, again, and the ending section is interesting, which is Music Power and European Musical Revolution from Belgium, where they perform 3 songs on their own, Green is the Color, Careful with That Axe, Eugene, and Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun, and then they end with Interstellar Overdrive with Frank Zappa on guitar, which is just fascinating. Yeah, that's probably some of the most interesting stuff to date, because it's them just doing their thing live to an audience that is actually prepared to hear it, you could say. Careful with That Axe, Eugene gets very old very quickly, and there's a lot of it in this box set. It is interesting to see them do it live. I think it does come across better with the visual, because you can see Roger really get into screaming at the top of his lungs and doing his thing on it, which is fine. It's just part of what they were about in those days. But really the standout feature of that whole 30-minute segment is the Interstellar Overdrive with Frank Zappa. Just fascinating stuff. And 1970, which is probably my favorite of the volumes in the set, Deviation. The 2 CDs on this are phenomenal. The CDs are just outstanding and are absolutely a big buying point. If there's one volume I recommend you buy separately from the set, if you don't want to buy the whole thing, then it is this one. So CD 1, we get Adam Hartmuther live in Montreux. This is the band version without the rest, without the choir and brass ensemble. And this is the same one that's included on the sampler CD, where it doesn't necessarily work that well as just a band piece, but it is fascinating to hear them have a go at it and just do it live as kind of more of a jam than as this more conceptual, multifaceted suite, which it became. This is followed by a BBC session from July. We get Embryo, Fat Old Son, Green is the Color, Careful with That Axe, Eugene, If, and then we get the full version of Atom Heart Mother with the choir, cello, and brass ensemble, and it sounds great, even on this BBC session. And again, I just love hearing John Peel talk. It's just fun to hear how excited he gets about the music, and that he really did enjoy these bands that he promoted. Great BBC session, absolutely worth checking out. I love that BBC stuff, and I think the Pink Floyd really took advantage of that in the early days. CD2, the first half of it, or more, is unreleased tracks from Zabriskie Point, 5 of which are included on the sampler volume, but you get 16 here. So, On the Highway, Auto Scene version 2, version 3, Aeroplane, Explosion, Riot Scene, Looking at Map. These titles are basically meaningless. Love Scene version 7, version 1, Take Off version 2, Love Scene version 2, Love Scene, Take 1, Unknown Song, Take 1, Love Scene, Take 2, Crumbling Land, Take 1. The titles are meaningless to me because I've never seen Zabriskie Point, so I don't know what they're in reference to at all. Don't know if that's a good movie. Let me know in the comments if you've seen it. That's not included here, so probably copyright stuff. But yeah, fun. It's interesting. It's interesting to hear them do this like psychedelic jam band stuff. It almost sounds like West Coast psychedelia. It sounds like stuff that like Jefferson Airplane would have been doing, things like that. Very hippie stuff, and very much a precursor to Obscured by Clouds. A lot of blues jamming, and yeah. So none of it is particularly their best work, but it is fascinating to hear, and it is recorded very well. And this is all followed by Atom Heart Mother, an early studio version, which is just the band. So I'm not sure if they just cut the tape in certain places to make it work with the full brass ensemble and choir, because a lot of it does sound just like the master take. I think like the Funky Dung section is the same lead phrases and everything as the master take. There's just no overdubs on this with the choir and orchestra. The set would have had 2 DVDs combined onto a single Blu-ray, but I got rid of those DVDs. So what is on the Blu-ray? We have an hour with Pink Floyd, KQED, in San Francisco, April 1970. And this is fascinating to hear them get to really stretch out live. It's not the most interesting visual thing in the world. I mean, particularly Atom Heart Mother. The first 10 minutes has nothing to do with the band. It's just them. It's just like a bunch of airplane shots of fields with some psychedelic colors. What that has to do with the track or Pink Floyd, I don't know, but you know, it is what it is. When they're actually performing, it is interesting to see. I will say, overall, this is a very boring set because it just has slow song after slow song after slow song, and it just never picks up any energy, really. So after Atom Heart Mother, the band version, we have Cymbeline, Grantchester Meadows, Green is the Color, Careful with That Axe, Eugene, and Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. Again, like those 2 songs, Careful with That Axe and Set the Controls, like the versions at Pompeii, for whatever reason, are just way more invigorating. But it is interesting to see them do it for a television studio. We get Pop d'Or, Festival de Saint-Tropez, France, 8th August 1970. This is split into 2 different sections, so probably 2 different broadcasts. And again, probably the same gripe. Like, it's fun to see them performing, but they're just a lot of slow songs, a lot of instrumental stuff that, particularly Atom Heart Mother, while it is interesting, it doesn't, I just don't know if it works because there's not that much melodic content without the orchestra on it. So first set is Cymbeline, Atom Heart Mother, and Embryo. The second set is Green is the Color, Careful with That Axe, Eugene, and you guessed it, Set the Controls for the Heart of the Sun. This is followed by the Roland Petit Ballet, who they'd work with again the following year. Just them doing some instrumental improvisations in a television studio, followed by a little bit of Embryo. And this is really hilarious. These instrumental improvisations are completely ridiculous. They're just making noise. It's basically the first 3 minutes of A Saucer Full of Secrets, but less interesting. I literally started laughing when I saw Roger and Dave just making a bunch of ASMR sounds into a microphone with an echo unit. what is to be said for it is there were certainly no other bands like Pink Floyd doing this at that time. They were utterly unique and original. Nobody else was doing what Pink Floyd was doing at this time. And these video clips and BBC sessions and things really give you a fuller sense of that than just the studio albums do. So there is value there. And we have Adam Hartmother with the Philip Jones Brass Ensemble and John Aldis Choir. This is in black and white at Black Hills Garden Party. Very poor sound quality, but it is cool to see them do it live with the brass ensemble and choir on stage. To see these choir people with their folders just singing these nonsense words on top of this rock band, probably wondering to themselves, what the absolute shit are we doing here? What is this? It ain't no Bach choral suite, that's for damn sure. Or Haydn or whatever. It's something else entirely. And again, like, what they were doing was groundbreaking because nobody else was doing this stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's all good. They took a lot of risks. And they made a lot of wrong turns before they finally found their lane, if you like. But that's really what the purpose of this box set is, if you ask me, is like, you get to see them make all these mistakes and become the Pink Floyd that we know and love. But they had to take a lot of wrong turns and make a lot of experimental moves before they got there. And speaking of experimental moves, another huge buying point for the box set for me, and particularly this volume, Deviation, is Adam Hartmother in Quad, which was released on 8-track and vinyl, I believe. And I must say, it works phenomenally well in Quad. It maybe doesn't have like the more enclosed, like circular sound that you would expect from a modern 5.1, but you can tell that this album was designed with quadraphonic sound in mind, and it really brings it to life, way more than the stereo mix. It is great. It really works in this format, especially the title track with the choir and brass like behind and stuff. It really works. It's great. Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast was particularly interesting in that format as well, and Fat Old Son sounds great as too. If I remember correctly, like the guitar solo is behind with the rest of the band in front, and just, yeah, I was very impressed with it. I thought it worked phenomenally well. Really great quad mix, and again, just like you can tell the album was designed with that format in mind, because that's how they were performing live, was with quadraphonic sound, which again, very few other bands were doing. So overall, to me, the 1970 Deviation set gives you the most value for money, and just has the most diverse stuff on it, and particularly the BBC session, the Adam Hartmother live versions that are band only, and Adam Hartmother, the album in Quad. Just outstanding stuff. Really some of the most satisfying things in the box set for me. Moving on to 1971, Reverberation, which, oh man, there's some stuff to talk about here. The CD opens with Nothing Part 14, which again was included on that sampler. Basically 7 minutes of the section that became the build-up to Echoes, followed by a BBC session, which includes Fat Old Son, where they jam for about 15 minutes, and I love it. They're finally making music here. They're not just making noise and banging gongs and making weird high-pitched squealy sounds and making a bunch of random tape delay effects. Like, they're actually jamming as a band, and it sounds really good. They sound like they're listening to each other. It's so good. And this is a song that really lends itself to being extended and dramatized like that. It really is great. This is followed by One of These Days, Embryo, and of course Echoes, which even in a mono BBC session, which, yeah, predates the release of the album. By this point they had been performing it live for quite a few months, and you can tell they've already honed it, and it just sounds phenomenal, and John Peel certainly agrees and thinks so too. Probably my favorite thing in the entire box set is this BBC session, particularly for Fat Old Son and for Echoes. It is just phenomenal. Wonderful BBC session. And to hear them actually playing what sounds like music is just like, this is it, you know? All the pieces are coming together. This is Pink Floyd. This is what we're building to. This is the story the box set tells. Is it all culminates in this moment. The moment where they write Metal is where they become Pink Floyd that we know and love. They were a version of Pink Floyd with Sid, and then it took them about 4 years of just floundering and trying stuff and doing all these experiments before they finally become the Pink Floyd of the 70s. And that's really all encapsulated in this BBC session, which is great. The DVD includes a lot of interview material, which is interesting. So, interview with Adam Hartmuther, the Spec D feature. It has clips from Hamburg and Offenbach, but the interview sections are really what make it interesting. Because the voiceover is basically saying Pink Floyd had become kitsch and had become trapped in their own like experimentation, which at that point is very arguably true. But just to hear what the band have to say about it is fascinating, and to hear Roger say that, you know, the media was just, they couldn't wait for rock and roll and all this experimental stuff to just take over and dominate the culture and become the new messiah. And he says, well, it's not, and it never was going to be. And he's absolutely right. The people that were looking for that in the late 60s were looking in the wrong place, because that was never what rock music was about, if you ask me. Yes, it's about rebellion, but it's not about redefining society and just, it's not about the revolutionary part of it. It's about the community part of it, and really the 60s and all that hippie crap had to happen so that in the 70s, bands like Pink Floyd could take the risks that they were taking and really redefine what we now call classic rock, you know? So that's fascinating for that reason, is just to hear them talking about that stuff. This is followed by a very interesting clip of them in like a cathedral or something in France, where they do Set the Controls and Cymbeline. And particularly it's funny because as they're jamming on Cymbeline, there's a little shot of David Gilmour walking over to Roger Waters and tuning his bass for him while he's playing, because it's a little bit out. Oh, Lord. Funny stuff, funny stuff. Very Spinal Tap in a way, you know? It's followed by another live Adam Hartmuther with brass and choir. Get to know, Careful with That Axe Eugene and band interview. This band interview is particularly fascinating because they're talking about the album that would become Metal and being fairly candid about the fact that they don't always agree on everything. At this point, I don't think there were particularly violent arguments in the band or really a vie for power, but just to hear them discussing how their opinions are all very different and how they somehow managed to make it coalesce on that album is really cool. This is followed by a quick documentary with Pink Floyd and their manager Steve O'Rourke, where they talk about bootleg records, which is pretty funny. Followed by an interview with Storm Thorgerson and Aubrey Powell talking about record covers, which is interesting. You can tell after I saw all the interviews with Storm and like the Dark Side of the Moon documentary and stuff, and then seeing him back in the 70s, and you're just like, wow, he really always was that person, wasn't he? Very posh, very, pretentious is not the right word. Charismatic, but in a bizarre way. Just a strange guy, and it comes across in the interview. But hey, you know what? He made some cool covers, that's for damn sure. It's followed by an animation of One of These Days, which is strange because it seems to predate the, well, it says created July 72, so maybe it was just included in this because the audio is from 71, but it seems to accompany that Pink Floyd ballet thing. It's just a bunch of ballet dancers to One of These Days, which is really weird, but interesting. Followed by a color version of Adam Hartmuther, and then a longer extended band version of Adam Hartmuther from the Hakone Aphrodite Open Air Festival, which I think the ticket is included or something in there. And then again, we get some spatial audio. We get Echoes in Quad, which was never officially released. And again, this song, this was a bit of a letdown for me because I was so excited to hear this because I'm like, oh man, a great song in stereo. It's going to sound even better in quad. And it's very, very different from the stereo mix. A lot of EQ choices are very different. It's far less ambient. It doesn't have as much like reverb and spatial stuff on it. And the emphasis is placed in different areas, like in the jam and then like the whale call section. Different lead lines are emphasized. And there's like volume adjustments in the wrong places compared to the stereo mix, so it was very different. Interesting to hear for like archival purposes, and like, okay, this is the direction that they might have gone with it had they finished the quad mix, but definitely sounds unfinished and quite rough. And this leads to one of the major frustrations with this, which some people on here watching probably know, which is the box was initially intended to have a 5.1 remix of Metal, which would have been just a massive buying point for me. But it was decided not to do that for band politics reasons, I think. But the real ridiculous part is that it's on there. It's on the Blu-ray. The 5.1 mix is on there, but you need some like advanced Blu-ray ripping software to extract it and play it, because it was left on by mistake. They rectified that when they released the individual volume, but in the original box set, which I do have, it's in there. And there's no way to access it from a standard Blu-ray player. And believe me, I've tried everything I can think of, but nope, you need this Blu-ray ripping software to extract it and like burn it onto another disc or a hard drive or something, which is just such a major frustration that it's there. I have it in my collection, but I can't access it. Oh, it's like I need the key to unlock the door, but I don't have it. People have posted it online, but I am not even going to take any risks with torrents or the Pirate Bay or anything like that. Absolutely not. I will not go within 10 miles of that crap. That's crap. It just scares the crap out of me. No viruses, none of that stuff. Not on my PC anyway. So maybe one day I will buy a Blu-ray drive and some crazy Blu-ray ripping software just to hear that 5.1 mix of Metal, because based on what I've read online, people say it is really good. And just what a letdown that they decided to not include it and made a mistake there. So there's packaging error number one, is that the Metal 5.1 mix is left on the Blu-ray but made inaccessible. And 1972 is the second packaging error, where on the original box they included Live at Pompeii on CD instead of Obscured by Clouds, and included the Obscured by Clouds remix as an extra disc that you had to then go back and reinsert into the box set where it belongs. So 72 Obfuscation, this Obscured by Clouds remix. Yeah, as I said in the previous video, I don't know what the point was. I guess it was mixed rather quickly, and there were some errors on the original version, and this version does sound better. It just, I'm not sure what the point was. Obscured by Clouds is not one of their major works, but it does sound great. I will say that. It does sound great, and I don't know if I prefer it to the original, though. It's not that it's massively different. It's just, it's a lot crisper and cleaner in many ways, but there's just a certain patina that the original has that you lose here with this more glossy sound that it has from Andy Jackson's mix. Just my thoughts. Don't see the point. Live at Pompeii on CD would have been a better inclusion than Obscured by Clouds in the first place, because the remix of Live at Pompeii is fantastic. It sounds amazing. Which leads us into the Blu-ray. So this is the last thing on the Blu-ray, but we'll talk about this first, which is Live at Pompeii, which includes 5.1 audio. The visuals are, I think they've been re-edited or something from maybe part of the director's cut, the DVD of which I've never bought, but the stuff has different scenes in it from what I remember when I watched Live at Pompeii on YouTube, so I'm not sure what version I was watching. And it doesn't include the full-length feature version, so the reason I say all this is because, as I'm sure many know, there is a re-release of Obscured by Clouds, or excuse me, of Live at Pompeii coming soon, and of course I've already pre-ordered it, duh, because this one will include both the concert film and the feature film in their original running order, and importantly, a remix by our man in the prog community, Steven Wilson. Yes, he's finally got his hands on some Pink Floyd. He's going to have a go at it, and I am excited to hear it, because everything else he's touched has turned to gold. So, Steven Wilson, this better be effing amazing. I'm so excited. And hopefully it looks a little bit more like I remember it, because there's like some weird CGI stuff in there that I guess was added for a 2002 DVD version, and it's like, why? this wasn't in there originally. There's no way it was. So I don't know if that's going to be included in this new release or not. But really, it should have been done that way for the box set originally. Maybe some licensing issues prevented it. I think the 5.1 mix on here sounds great already, but I am excited to see what Steven Wilson does with it. I'm stoked on that. So when I get that, I'll probably just include it as part of this box and just set it inside there, as I've done with some of my immersion sets and things that should have been in there that we'll talk about. But had that re-release not been announced, I would have said that volume alone is worth buying just for Live at Pompeii. But we'll see how this re-release goes, and then I'll reassess and decide, is it really worth it? Because other than that, 1972 volume is not the most interesting. The Obscured by Clouds remix sounds really good, but just, are you a fan of that album? If not, then maybe not the most interesting audio. In terms of the DVD, again, there is some interesting stuff here. So we start with What's the Deal, which is just recording session photos of them at the Chateau de Hérouville in France, recording the album. Pop de, an interview with Roger and David. And then Brighton Dome, Set the Controls, and Careful with That Axe, Eugene, which both of those clips are included on the Dark Side of the Moon immersion box set, repeated here. The interesting thing here is the Roland Petit Ballet news reports from 72 and 73 covering the Pink Floyd ballet, which until this box set I had never heard of. I had no idea they did that. And it's a shame like video doesn't exist of the entire performance, or if it does, it's not included here, but you get 4 different news reports, each covering slightly different portions of that performance, and just to see Pink Floyd doing a ballet. Some of the stuff they included in there were, well, basically the stage favorites of the time, basically everything that's in Live at Pompeii. Yeah, very strange, but again, just goes back to that point that nobody else was doing what Pink Floyd was doing. They truly were one of the most progressive and original bands on the scene, but still taking a lot of side steps, even though they had really coalesced their sound with metal the previous year before they got to Dark Side of the Moon and finished it. They were still kind of going off in weird artsy directions. So the 72 volume is probably the least interesting of everything, now that this Live at Pompeii re-release has been announced, which I'm very excited for. So if you plan on buying that, then the Obfuscation volume probably does not offer you that much value for money, unless you're really interested in seeing the news reports on this ballet, but it's probably on YouTube anyway, so who knows. And we're on to the final volume, the continuation volume, which has stuff that basically isn't high enough quality to go anywhere else in the box. And this is for the deepest and deepest of Pink Floyd fans. We get 2 BBC sessions, which are clearly not master tapes. They're off-air recordings or something, maybe even recorded. The third BBC session here sounds like it was recorded off a transistor radio onto like a pocket cassette recorder. The sound quality is just awful, to the point where, like, if you didn't know, it would almost be hard to, there would be almost no defining feature that this even is Pink Floyd. The first session from September 67 has Flaming, Scarecrow, The Gnome, Matilda Mother, Reaction in G, and Set the Controls. The second session has Scream Thy Last Scream, Vegetable Man, Power Talk Age, and Jug Band Blues. This is from December 67. And of course, this is Pink Floyd's, basically his final month in Pink Floyd. Syd Barrett's final month. Followed by a session from December 68 where they play Baby Blue Shuffle in D major, which is like an early version of the Narrow Way, followed by just a blues jam, followed by a stupid radio ad, followed by some really stupid music from a really stupid film called The Committee, which we'll get to. Clearly just taken from the optical print of the movie. You can tell because there's dialogue left in. Moonhead live on 1969 BBC TV Moon Landings broadcast, which is interesting to hear for historical purposes, but it's not a particularly interesting jam. Yeah, most of this disc, well, the BBC session, particularly the 68 one, or the December 67 one, is fascinating to hear despite the poor sound quality. But for me, the biggest irony is the biggest buying point of the entire I guess not this particular volume because this volume isn't available separately. But one of the most exciting things on the box set for me is not even from this period. It's Echoes Live at Wembley '74. So with this, finally across 3 box sets, the Wembley show is complete because we get 3 tracks from it on the Wish You Were Here box, all of Dark Side of the Moon on the Dark Side of the Moon box, and finally we get the encore Echoes in this box, which is just fantastic. Oh, it's so cool, with Dick Perry doing his sax solo in place of Gilmour's guitar solo. They use the backing vocalists on it, and the sound quality is just great. Oh, it's so good. I think they missed a massive opportunity when they did the Dark Side of the Moon 50th anniversary box set, which I had and then hawked. They missed a massive opportunity to do on vinyl and on CD the full Wembley concert all in one place. Oh, they should have done that. They really should have done that. They should have included the full set all in one place. But if you've got those 3 box sets, then you can combine them all onto a burned CD, which I have done. Because although it's clearly not their best performance, and Gilmour's voice particularly sounds scratchy and just not in good shape there, it's still just great to hear maybe the definitive Pink Floyd set list, the working versions of what became Dogs and Sheep and Shine On You Crazy Diamond, plus all of Dark Side of the Moon, plus finally Echoes, which just is phenomenal. That's certainly by far the highlight of the CD disc for me. Moving on to the DVDs and Blu-rays. Arnold Lane alternative clip. That one is high quality. Don't know why they didn't include it on the '67 set. Easily could have fit. Followed by a really stupid clip of Corporal Clegg in A Saucer Full of Secrets, where, yeah, just some more psychedelic hippie crap. They're having a food fight during Corporal Clegg, and then just nonsense for A Saucer Full of Secrets. Adam Hartmother from Bath. Here we go again with Set the Controls and A Saucer Full of Secrets, a really poor quality video clip from Kralingen Music Festival. Can see why that wasn't included on one of the main volumes, not particularly interesting. Followed by the Amsterdam Rock Circus with Adam Hartmother, Careful with That Axe Eugene, and A Saucer Full of Secrets. And after this, we're finally done with Careful with That Axe Eugene, which just gets so boring. And then this is followed by The Committee feature film, which is just awful. It is so bad. It is so dumb. Oh yeah, I put that on Thursday night when I got home from a long day. And it's one of those movies that's actually so bad it's good. I guess the message is society is not what you think it is or something. I don't know. It's really pretentious and really stupid. And the Pink Floyd music barely plays a part in it at all. So, you know, dumb. It features Paul Jones from, Manfred Mann, who is not a particularly great actor, and neither is anybody else in it. Yeah, just a bizarre, silly movie. There's a scene in there where the main character, Paul Jones, is talking to his boss about having to go away for this committee, and the guy says to him, I want to talk to you after work today. I saw a very interesting film last night. And I immediately blurted out loud while I was watching it, well, it sure as hell wasn't this one. Oh dear. Oh dear. Yeah, really stupid movie, but it's there if you want to watch it. And it's restored great. It looks really good. Actually, no, I remember that one having some weird, like, video glitches. Maybe that one was, it looked like that one was restored from tape and not from film. Although the sound sounds like it was taken from an optical film soundtrack. It certainly has that white noise that's indicative of an optical soundtrack. And then the second Blu-ray, which is more interesting, includes More and La Vallée, the 2 Barbet Schroeder films, which I just watched over the last 2 days for the first time, and since whenever the last time I went through this massive behemoth of a box set was. More I really like. I actually enjoyed that film a lot. I thought the acting was fairly decent, and the story is really interesting. Very dramatic story about heroin addiction, and yeah, I mean, the Pink Floyd music that's in it is all incidental. It's all just like whenever there's a tape recorder being played or something, it's Pink Floyd music, which is interesting. The music doesn't really particularly play a big part of it. But I did enjoy the movie a lot. I really liked it. I was actually very entertained by it. Cool movie. La Vallée, which I just finished watching a couple hours ago, which is, God, it's so beautifully shot. Looks gorgeous, absolutely amazing. The cinematography is phenomenal. The shame is I don't know what the hell they're talking about because it's in French. And here's another gripe with the box set. On almost all the foreign video clips with foreign announcers, they included subtitles throughout the box set. And for some reason, they didn't include them here on Obscured by Clouds. I guess whoever did the subtitles was too lazy to do it for this whole feature film, which is a real shame because I would love to know what the dialogue is because I don't speak French. A very small percentage of it is in English, and I mean I can follow the basic story of what's going on, but just a shame that I don't know what they're saying. Would be nice to know. Yeah, what a bummer that didn't include subtitles, but it is a very beautifully shot film. What's particularly interesting about More and Obscured by Clouds is in the moments where you do hear Pink Floyd music, it's all alternate takes from what ended up on the albums More and Obscured by Clouds. All different versions, like on Free 4, I noticed as I was watching today, it's like entirely different lyrics on Free 4 and things like that. Yeah, both very, I was about to say 60s movies, but Obscured by Clouds is a 70s film, I guess. But after this, Pink Floyd's basically done with film soundtracks, so there's that. But I did enjoy More. I'm pretty sure it's available separately. I looked it up and it seems like it is. So that was actually a very good film. I would highly recommend that. It was worth a watch. I enjoyed watching it a lot. La Vallée, I'm sure I would have enjoyed it a lot more if I could have understood it. Because while I can follow the story, I would have liked to have known what the characters are saying to each other. They could be some of the best actors in the world, but I wouldn't know because I don't know what they're talking about. Shame. What a pity, right? And then we have our singles, which are just, they're the singles, the first 10 single tracks, and they sound really good on vinyl, and they're nice to own. Very nice to own. Certainly a buying point of the box set for me, because I'm a sucker for 7-inch singles, even though I do prefer the album format. I do like me a nice little vinyl 7-inch single. There's just something about it that I find cute and endearing. Just a memory of a lost era, kind of. Alright, that's all of it. We made it through. Final thoughts. If you're gonna go and seek out some of those individual volumes, which I'm not sure how readily available they are, in terms of the most bang for buck, 1970 Deviation is fascinating in terms of the video quality. It includes the BBC session, it includes, and Adam Hartmuther in quad, which really, really works. That one is certainly my favorite of the 7 individual sets within the set. Of course, I was very happy to see Pink Floyd live in Pompeii in 5.1, but that is very likely going to be superseded by this individual release coming out in May this year. The Reverberation one, the BBC session is just outstanding. The Blu-ray was not as interesting, but the BBC session was just phenomenal. It really is worth it just for that. If you can find that individual volume at a reasonable price, that BBC session is just outstanding. Really, really my favorite thing in the entire box set is that BBC session on the Reverberation disc. And as for the other ones, 69 also I think was very, very interesting, particularly for The Man and the Journey suite. That CD was really, really cool. Excuse me, to hear them do those things in context. Do I recommend the overall set? Well, I just looked at it today on Amazon to see are there still copies available and how much are they going for. They're going about $600, which is a little bit more pricey than what it was retailed at. For that price in the first place, was it worth it? No. No, it's just not. I'm sorry. Even though I do love it, and obviously I appreciate it because I've kept it, it's just not. That is an absurd amount of money to pay for something. And because I was such a diehard Pink Floyd fan, I was willing to fork it over, and I certainly don't regret forking it over, but that is a lot of money. That is a lot of money. That's a used car right there, man. That's insane. Even at the time, I knew it was a ridiculous price, but I just was a sucker for Pink Floyd, and I was willing to pay it because of a lot of the buying points I just mentioned. And I didn't know that they were going to release the individual volumes separately. At least I don't think I remembered that. And I was actually really excited to see more in La Vallée. I wanted to see those movies, so I thought it would be cool to have the full set with those in them. Just a shame that I didn't know La Vallée was mostly in French and wasn't going to have English subtitles, so that's a shame, but yeah. And I was excited to hear some of the early Syd Barrett stuff too. It ended up being a little bit disappointing, but I was excited to hear it. The packaging, I mean, it's just so over the top and ridiculous. It's so out there. Why Pink Floyd insists on doing these big, massive art presentations of their stuff recently, I don't know. It doesn't bother me, but I do believe that a lot of it is just in there to fork the price up as high as they can, because the box itself probably costs quite a bit to manufacture. And while presentation goes a long way, there is certainly a breaking point for everything, and I think I've found that breaking point with Pink Floyd. They just go so far over the top with these box sets, man. It's ridiculous. As we'll see when we get to the immersion sets as well. Thoughts on like this period in Pink Floyd's career? Well, I think I basically said what I have to say, which is this box set, the most interesting thing it does is it tells a story. It tells a story of a band finding its feet and becoming the band that it's known and loved for being, one of the most successful bands in the history of rock and roll music. But they had to go through a lot of experimentation before they got there. So if you want to hear them go on that journey with them, then I can think of no better way to do it than this box set, if you're willing to pay that price for it. And if you're not, I think the sampler CD offers a good overview of everything, and if there's one volume in this set that absolutely gets recommended for buying separately, it's the 1970 Deviation volume, for sure, no question about it, just because it offers you the most material, most bang for your buck. What would I rate the box set? It's tough, because while I do really like it, and it was a fascinating experience to go through it again, not everything in it is all that enjoyable to watch or listen to necessarily. And it is just so expensive. Because of that mess up with the metal 5.1, which would have added quite a bit of value for me had it been in there the way it was supposed to be in there, and because the Obscured by Clouds thing is being superseded this year, not Obscured by Clouds, because the Pink Floyd Live at Pompeii thing is going to be superseded this year with the Steven Wilson mix, and because the packaging is just so over the top and ridiculous and not necessary, even if it does look cool, I'm going to go with a 3. A very generous 3 out of 5. And whether you want this thing or not is really down to, are you willing to pay to go on this journey? If you think of it like a museum exhibition that has like a very limited audience and you're part of the special few that gets to be part of this collector's club and listen to all this stuff, then yes, it's just a shame when you see people charge this much for stuff when other bands like King Crimson are charging far more reasonable prices for far more material that in many cases is far more enjoyable to listen to by and large. Obviously all of that is subjective, but those are my thoughts. 3 out of 5. It was a fascinating journey. it is one of the most expansive and complete and storytelling archive box sets that I can think of. Certainly the most so in my collection. And I do love it and don't plan on parting with it. But it's too expensive and it's too over the top for it to get a full 5 out of 5, or for me to like go gung-ho recommending this thing. But I am a diehard Pink Floyd fan, and while this does challenge how much I do like them, it is a fascinating journey, and I enjoyed going through that journey again for the first time in many years. And it does make me that much more excited to enter the next chapter, which is like post-metal and Pompeii. Pink Floyd is now Pink Floyd, and Dark Side of the Moon is the album where the rubber hits the road, you know? So that's coming up next. It's going to be the Dark Side of the Moon immersion box set, and I'm also going to include the making of documentary and the Atmos Blu-ray in the next chapter when I talk about that. So that is all for now. Let me know in the comments, what do you think about this box set? Do you own it? Do you plan to own it? What were your favorite segments of it? What would you rate it? And overall, just what are your thoughts on this period of 65 to 72 in Pink Floyd's history? Let me know. That's all for now. Thanks for watching. Bye.